really for me, it was a lot of pain. To be honest, it was the pain of like looking forward and not being happy with my life. It was the pain of looking at every relationship in my life and saying, I don't know that I really value this relationship, or worse, that I don't know if they value me. I surrounded myself with a lot of people that were in the industry, in the lingo, but didn't really care for that. I didn't care for, and I don't think they really actually cared for me.
The water's fine, homie, jump into the deep end. Sow it, you will reap it. We talking how to start it, how to grow it, how to keep it. Take a deep breath. You are now rocking with Founder Secret.
Welcome, Retta. Thanks for joining the pod. Welcome to Founder Secrets.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
We're at another entrepreneur's wedding in Jamaica, man, and thanks for making the time. We're all at the wedding, but in different places. So appreciate you doing it, man.
Yeah, of course. I love you guys, and always happy to connect with you guys and share a bit of my story. So
yeah,
about this.
I know we had Sam on last week. He kind of transitioned from finance, and you're close with Sam. He kind of transitioned from finance into the entrepreneur world. It seems like you did a kind of similar path, right? Can you speak to that a bit and kind of what made you take that leap?
Yeah. There's a lot behind that decision, that kind of my path. But to share a little bit about that, I spent 10 years as a M&A investment banker, starting my career off at Lehman Brothers, and kind of track back into the way I was raised, and it was always about kind of achievement and going to a good school and getting that good job, and actually just staying at that good job, for the love from really family, my parents, and external, the community. Over time, though, I started recognizing that it wasn't serving me, and I was concerned about the relationships and the way that the Wall Street was kind of impacting me. And so, it took a decade to figure out some of the journey and the transition, but decided that, that ultimately what I wanted out of my life was more time to connect with myself and to understand myself. And of course, then with my loved ones, friends and family. And so decided to start my own thing about 4 years ago.
Wow. That's awesome, man. When you say like how you were raised, maybe you dig into that a little bit. What do you mean by that? Like, actually, if you give us a little background, where's your name from? And talk about that a bit.
Yeah, of course. So Retta Abraham Mulugeta is my full name. And my parents are Ethiopian and Japanese. They met here in the U.S. doing their doctorates at University of Madison, Wisconsin. And that's where I was born. I was born in the Midwest. And they really came from, with the intention of coming to the U.S. to really create a better opportunity for themselves and really myself and my sister. Right? And so we're raised, as I think about how I grew up, my father was a professor in finance, and my mom worked in basically forecasting for Cornell University, which is where I went to college, and then also spent time in corporate Corning. But they, we kind of had an academic family household of where, CNBC was on, and we were talking about school and grades and wanting to, do well and move on and do big things in the world. And so I would probably compare my raising to a kind of traditional foreign upraising, where parents, we grew up in a small town in upstate New York, Dryden, New York, which has, a population of probably, a few thousand. So really a small town. And that was a unique experience knowing that.
Do you think you'd become an entrepreneur when you were growing up there?
I always had a vision for myself. I did always think that I would be a businessman. I did always have a vision of going to Wall Street and wearing a suit and tie into work with a briefcase. I really actually started off as an entrepreneur early on. My first entrepreneurial endeavor was selling lollipops in school. And so I figured out that I could buy Lollipops for, 8 cents if I bought them in bulk and sell them for a quarter in middle school. And so
it's a great margin.
It's a pretty good margin. And not only that, so I wouldn't actually necessarily sell them, though I was pretty good at it. I would actually engage the neighborhood kids. And so I had all of the other kids selling the blow pops, and I would pay them, I think, a nickel for every one that they sold, and I would make the difference. And so it became a really fun game at the end of the week where everybody would count up their lollipops that they sold, and I would pay everybody. And for me, you know, I was in whatever, sixth grade, seventh grade. I
How
was
many
making
kids
like,
was it?
you know, that we had four kids in the Dryden school, and then I was starting to expand to other schools as well. And so
It's
I
like
had my
Facebook.
friends in other, yeah, yeah. So that was pretty good. That was my first entrepreneurial endeavor, and that worked out well. And so yeah, I think I've always had the bug since an early age.
That's awesome. But how do you, because I think a lot of us had visions of that growing up, maybe, but then it's hard to turn them into reality after you were just talking about being at a job. Yeah, how do you like turn that into, your reality? Like, what were the challenges you had to overcome?
Well, I think that the vision has shifted over time, and you know, I remember being a young guy in school in a small town, and always having a vision of kind of going into a big city and wearing the suit and tie and doing
Mm.
important things. And I didn't really know what that was. You know, at the time, you can imagine being 10 years old, but saying like, I want to go that direction and want to be that. And so that was kind of my path. I spent, you know, many years doing well in school, getting into the right school, studying things I needed to study, working through the interview process to get into that job, you know, that investment banking job at Lehman Brothers, which at the time was like the biggest. I won the lottery, right? It was such a important milestone for me. And once I got in, it became just continue to learn, like learn and move to the top, and absorb as much as I can. And so that was, you know, I really appreciated that about myself, of just really having this kind of desire and hunger to continue to soak in and do the hard work and work, you know, as long as or more than anybody else. I think that was also a metric of how I was gauging myself. And so that was always, I saw that kind of initial time period as a time for me to build my skills with the goal of moving forward and being really an executive mover and shaker that was kind of making things happen. And so fast forward a little bit more, you kind of realize over time, like maybe that's not as, you know, while it does, you know, I've done a lot of big deals and, you know, I've done over 20 transactions and, you know, over 50 billion of announced M&A in my time. Doing another big deal, maybe not exactly what you thought it was when you were that 10-year-old kind of having that vision of wearing a suit and tie and coming in. And so, and then also, what is the cost of being that person, that advisor that is working on these deals? Are there other gives that you may not have anticipated? And there were many
Mm.
gives. I think there is full dedication. You need to be 100% focused on it. And really, that's not sometimes thing. It's around the clock. There's very little time for other people, and that including yourself. And so for me, one of the big things that was an issue was the amount of growth that I had seen in myself, and that's emotional growth, and that's growth in, you know, understanding how to love myself, how to love other people, how to, you know, connect with others that may not be in this kind of Wall Street or investment banking world. My world is actually very narrow, and I thought, you know, as I fast forwarded to the end, what were the things that I really wanted to accomplish in my life, and that became a really driving factor that I almost couldn't pull out of my head around, you know, these are things, I must leave. Otherwise, I'm going to be stuck on a path that I can't come out of. And so so I think through that understanding, the dream has shifted into something that's more holistic approach about friends and community and romantic partner contribution. Still, of course, want to contribute to the world through business, but maybe in a different path. And so that's the journey I've been on for the last 4 or 5 years.
I love that. What made you take? So I feel like a lot of us have that in our heads, right? You know, we want to make this shift that you're talking about. We feel the pains that you're feeling around. I want to spend more time working on myself. I want to spend. How did you actually make that a reality? You know, for every 100 people that have that thought, maybe one or two or three probably really make this such a large move. You know, in your case, what was there a specific incident, or was there something that really pushed you over and said, all right, now I'm going to do it? What made you actually take the step?
Take us the moment when you took the leap.
The leap. You know, there's a couple ways to think about it. I kind of track back, and you know, there's a lot of courage I think that I took and had in making that leap, because it was such a big change. You know, senior level banker going into kind of entrepreneurship is really, you know, not something that you see all the time. And really, for me, it was a lot of pain. to be honest. It was the pain of like looking forward and not being happy with my life. It was the pain of looking at every relationship in my life and saying, I don't know that I really value this relationship, or worse, that I don't know if they value me. You know, I surrounded myself with a lot of people that were in the industry, in the lingo, but didn't really care for that. I didn't care for, and I don't think they really actually cared for me. That's friends. That's social. That's within work. That was also this kind of feeling of the work that I was doing. I'd been doing it for so long, and I lost that passion. It's also in my romantic relationship. It was convenience, and it wasn't actually something that was real and had the depth that I was looking for. And as I reflected on all of this, and there's a quiet period in the kind of Wall Street world for a few days, it's like right before, Christmas. And then as the new year approaches, it's kind of where everybody's a little, unless you're active on a deal, pencils down. And I just had that moment to reflect. And I thought the only person or only thing that is common amongst all of these variables that I was looking at as a romantic life, social life, work life, the only common denominator is me, myself. And so I said, with my best knowledge and thinking, I had got myself into this position. So the only person that's going to get me out is me. And I said, I need to take a drastically different approach to everything, because whatever I've been doing has got me here. And if I want, how can I expect different results if I continue to behave the same way? And so that led to my process of self-growth and self-discovery, and really just tried to learn from as many different people as I possibly could that were very different. I tried to, anybody had a background in finance, I went the other direction, and I looked for people that were focused on community, were focused on spirituality, were focused on entrepreneurship. And I started to just learn from these people. And so that was the pain point that led to growth, that led to the confidence that that other people were being successful in creating their own path. And then that translated to me making that decision.
So what did you do? I guess to get into the details of what did you do? I know now you have a couple businesses, but walk us through exactly what did you do after taking the leap?
Yeah. So the first part was around getting the muscle to understand what I wanted and to believe in myself and to have kind of the self-love and confidence that I needed. And that was a meaningful process. It did take time. I, went to a number of seminars and things like Landmark, things like Tony Robbins, groups like AFES, things like Burning Man, experienced all of these things to really get a taste for what was out there. And was astounded. I said, wow, this is such a big world out there. And I've been living in such a narrow way. So I was very excited, and I had the confidence to be able to make that leap. This is while I was still in banking. I was basically committed to myself to transition out. But then I said, what am I going to do for money? I want to leave. What am I going to do for money? I've built up this, I live in Manhattan. I do these, things. I have a lifestyle. Look, what am I going to do? And so that became a different search. It's an active mental search of what can I do to utilize the skills that I have, that also advantage of a kind of macro trends, and I'm really an investor. And so the concept, what was happening was I was seeing a lot of growth in e-commerce and a lot of degradation in retail. And that was the time when JCPenney was going under, Sears was having issues, and we're seeing really growth in all things e-commerce, Amazon in particular, where there was just mass adoption and everybody was buying from that. And went to a few conferences and went to like an Amazon sellers conference. And I said, wow, these guys are really, actually making quite a bit of money and are building these like wonderful things. They're building teams. They have a lot of people. They have all these strategies that I'd never been exposed to. And I thought, wow, there's, this is cool for a lot of different reasons. I was really excited about traveling and having something that was virtual at the time, pre-COVID. Everybody was still going into the office. And so I said, wow, if I could have a virtual team, do stuff on, online, it seems like a good opportunity. But it didn't really fit because there's so much skill and knowledge that I had acquired through my M&A time. And I said, I'm not really utilizing that. And then that's where, and so as I continued to investigate, how can I take advantage of what's happening in the world that fit with this is e-commerce growth, and then that fit with my personal desires, which is the ability to travel and see the world, but also utilize my background in investment banking and M&A specifically. And I said, okay, what about if I can buy these assets, buy these businesses the same way that somebody would think about buying a house? What are the things that would make this asset appreciate over time? What are the things that make it work the other way? And And I had met one other guy. At the time, since then, many have started to do that as well. But at the time, there were just a few people that were doing it. I thought, this is a smart idea. And so that actually, when I came across that idea, it hit me like a light bulb. I said, this is what I'm going to go do. And that was in December of 2017. And then in January of 2018, I signed the LOI for my first deal that I was going to buy. You know, in that process from December to January, I probably looked at 1,000 deals and did calls with, I don't know, 50 different assets, and then bid on 5 different ones, look for the best deal. And then one, it was between one and another business. And then
where do you even find these deals? Like, where does one find these assets in the first place?
There's a lot of different sources as you start to look, but there basically are brokers now that will sell these assets. These could be online assets, they could be SaaS businesses, they could be hybrid businesses as well, like brick and mortar plus something in online. But a couple of sources are Biz Buy Sell, that's one. FE International is another one. Quiet Life Brokerage is another one. But you know, these are they're many out there now.
And they're like a certain size of revenue that you were looking for?
Yeah, I was looking for something that would kind of sustain my lifestyle, or kind of the bare bones living at the time. And I said that was like the minimum kind of earning that I was looking for. And then I started looking up too. I said, well, what happens if you kind of just magnify that a little bit more? You know, what's the difference between one business or a bigger business? Essentially, they're the same. And so I started stretching up a little bit more, and I'm glad that I did. And so that was the first one. And, you know, that's anywhere between, you know, $250,000 or $1 million of earnings plus, and some, depending on the margin, you know, 4 or 5 times that on revenue. So call it $1 million of EBITDA and $5 million of revenue.
And so how do you finance a deal like a house? You know, you could get a mortgage, but on a Amazon business, how do you afford to buy a business like that?
Sure. Yeah, there are pockets of financing that are available to help finance the acquisition of these deals. And so again, like anything else, you go talk to people that are doing it and figure out how they've done it, and then reach out to their sources of financing. And so they're private lenders that will provide loans on these businesses. And there's a couple different ways. You could do an SBA backed loan where you're writing a personal guarantee. That's depending on the loan. There's a SBA 7A that's up to $5 million, $5 million on the loaned amount. And so you can typically they'll ask for about 20% down, but you can do things like increase the loan amount above the purchase price to include working capital, so you can actually do a super highly leveraged deal. My actually first deal was over 100% borrowed, so there's no cash out of pocket. Yeah, at the end of the day.
Wait, what do you mean over 100%? How can you have over 100% of the deal for the working capital?
So the example would be, let's say it's $1 million acquisition, and the bank says put 80%, or they'll loan you 80%, so put $200K down. You can say, okay, great, thank you, but I'm also going to need purchase inventory. I'm also going to need to invest in these marketing initiatives, and that's going to cost me $300,000. So I actually need $1.1 million to buy the $1 million asset. And so at the time of close, they'll give you the 800,000 plus the 200,000 out of pocket from yourself, but then they will also give you the working capital of the additional 300,000. So you essentially pay yourself back the 200,000 that came out of pocket, and your net up 100K.
Was there a limit on that? Like, could you justify another $1 million of working capital and inventory? What's the limit?
Yeah, there's a limit. Yeah, it's a limit. There's a committee around that, and so each bank is, you know, you can't double it. So it has to be reasonable, and there has to be some detail and, you know, a meaningful plan around how you're using that working capital. But you know, within range, there's flexibility. Yeah.
Can you speak to going from, you know, you worked in banking, right? And then you work for people and you got a big team and all that, to buying a business. And then did you become a full-time operator of that business? I assume that not just, you know, buying the business and all this was a big change, but also the ability to run the business, and how do you manage a business like that? It's quite, right? It seems like quite a change from what you were doing before.
Yeah, huge change. It's been probably the biggest part of learning, not just the operations and the specifics of how to manage these businesses, but really the people management. And while, you know, in my banking years, I've been managing and working with a lot of different people, these are very similar people to myself. They've come to good schools. They're motivated. They're going to get stuff done. And so communicating with, you know, one of my first employees, she's, you know, a former school teacher that was a mom that lived in Canada and, you know, loved playing World of Warcraft. You know, this is a different style. This is a different person that I'm used to interacting with. And what's important to her in her life is very different than the things that, you know, were important to the people that I had been working with in the past. So how to communicate, how to motivate, what's the right balance? Like, what does performance look like for her versus like my expectation of my own performance? There was a lot of learning on people stuff, and I continue to study people. It's really my biggest opportunity for growth in scaling my businesses. But rewinding to that first time, you know, I did all my operations management through data. It would be the right KPIs on every element of the business, so it could assess where, you know, there were weakness or where, you know, there was maybe some opportunity. Everything was data driven and less so on the people side. And so as I learned over time that you need the people. You actively need people to be working and problem solving for you. And so how do you create ownership amongst the people that you're working with within the business and have them own the data, have them own the ideas, and then have them drive? And that's a big shift from kind of data-driven analytics and then kind of a command style of leadership. And so there's been a lot of growth from my side as a leader of moving away to that, to more of an inclusive strategy of speaking to everybody and getting their buy-in and having them, you know, really behave as owners and act in the company's best interest.
So what are like some of the things you say you learned in that growth? What are some of the tools you can share about how you managed or how you improved your management of those people?
I think there's been a lot of different elements of growth and learning, a lot through reading, a lot through just experience. The main thing that I think I would share is that each person is uniquely different and requires a lot of studying and understanding to ensure that you're communicating to them effectively and that they're aligned. You must create win-win scenarios in every instance of which people are taking action. If there's not a win-win, eventually it's going to be a lose in one way or another. And that's not what creates sustained growth and a culture that will survive on its own and flourish on its own. So spending the time to intimately understand each individual, and it's understanding the individual with the intention of being able to effectively communicate to them, particularly in areas of disagreement or where there may be two opposing views. How do we create a win-win solution where each person is still happy? And I think that's been an opportunity. I think there's still growth there, but it's a very different approach that I now taking than I would have in the past.
I have a question around like what's next for you? You know, if all this, you know, this is all going well, like what does it look like 3-5 years from now? What is the, not necessarily vision for this business maybe, but maybe you opened this conversation by talking about how your life had changed so much and how much introspection there was. Like where do you see that going 3 or 5 years from now?
Yeah, I love that. And you know, I'd share that after the first acquisition, there's been now another acquisition which requires more time and that's scaled and more people. And all of a sudden I found myself quite busy again. It reminds me a lot of my days that back on finance in my Wall Street days. And, you know, as I pick my head up and, you know, enjoy, you know, this beautiful weather and time with wonderful people like yourselves, I've thought about like what is serving me in my life right now and what is not serving me. And many things at one point that are in my life today, they're all beautiful things, may not be serving me the same way that they have in the past. And so consciously started kind of making time and shedding away some of the things that I've added on over the past few years to then create more space to focus on that next thing. The next thing in the near term is really around family. I found, you know, the love of my life, she's a wonderful person, and we're planning on, you know, having a beautiful family and putting the energy and time into that person is meaningful, something really important to me and to her. And so that's around the corner and it's very exciting. And, you know, professionally, I want to continue to grow ways that will make me a more effective leader. I think this growth in both these businesses translates not only to the success of the businesses, but more importantly, my ability to contribute and influence and have impact on the world. And, the specifics of what that's going to be, that next project, the next thing, it's unclear to me right now. There is a vision that I have of myself and the impact that I have in the world. So,
what do you mean? What's that vision? When you think of that vision, what does that look for you?
I think it would be, there's different levels of impact that I think through, importantly the family. So having a loving relationship with a partner and kind of moving through life together with somebody in a way that we share all of the deep and rich experiences of life. And then how that moves then into your family and children and the impact that they can then have on the world. These are the kind of most important things that kind of circle one, I would call it, or primary influence. Secondary would be around the people that I interact with on a daily basis, close friends, employees, really members of my community, and can I have a positive impact on them in a way that shifts their thinking and that maybe makes them a little bit of a person that is, I would say, just a more loving person, a person that's more friendly and available to the world. And if, across many people, a 1 millimeter shift over time and years, hopefully these people then go out and have their impact. And then finally to the community, broader philanthropic organizations or any kind of affiliation that other people may be part of, having ways to impact that and just myself as a person. I'd share that there's not a specific strategy other than hopefully just being myself, and through being myself, having a positive impact in the way that people perceive themselves, and then hopefully then the way that they show up in the world.
Yeah, you seem like a very open person. I like one of the most open people I meet. When you see somebody, you just, I don't know, you have this very, like, you immediately jump at a hug. I'm wondering, did you have that when you were in banking, or is that stuff you developed through like Burning Man and these other shit? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, I love that. No, I didn't do the big hugs. I didn't do the connection. And I remember getting like my first real hug where another guy just held me and I said, what the heck just happened? Like I felt like stuff move within myself and like me melt away. I kind of like stumbled a little bit. I'm like, what? I don't know what just happened, but wow. And I started reflecting on that. And it was because I was starting to let go of some stuff, some barriers that I had up, letting other people in. And then I just became a little bit more open and hearing what, others had to say. And there was less of this armor that I was wearing in the way that I was behaving. And I wondered how many other people wear this armor, this armor when they walk around, right? Or really aren't being their authentic and genuine selves. And so, yeah, I started sharing my experience of a hug with other people and giving hugs. And I thought, it's, one, just a positive way of sharing energy and hopefully inspiring and communicating love. And yeah, so I was really impacted by that. And since then, have been an avid hugger.
All right. Any other things you have on your mind, Taylor?
Yeah. Any requests you have, or any last things that
you all plug your share? Why don't you mention the folks you donate to and why? If you feel comfortable.
Yeah. America Scores, is wonderful, Flavia, to have you, also just help support the organization. America Scores has been an organization that I've been board member of for the past 6 years. Program that provides at-risk youth after-school programming in both soccer and poetry. And I am a board member of the New York chapter. We serve about 20 schools and have over 1,000 kids that we support. And soccer for me was a really important tool that I learned. It gave me discipline, it gave me leadership, it gave me, focus in terms of training. It gave me confidence in myself and my ability to excel and move up the ranks and up levels. And I was a competitive player. And so wanted to share that it was something very, and still is, important to me from a learning perspective. And just want to do my part to create the opportunity for others to also experience that and get hopefully the same opportunities that I did from the sport.
That's awesome. One other quick tactical question I meant to ask you is, we know a lot of folks in the Amazon businesses these days, and with the markets turning, with Amazon falling so much, I'm curious, is that still an opportunity if you're an entrepreneur out there being like, well, we should get into the Amazon stuff? or do you think that's kind of on its way, or not its way down, but maybe less of an exciting place to start as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. There's been many shifts in e-commerce since COVID, and I'd say generally everything is more challenging, more competitive, more expensive. And so for anybody that's listening and thinking about it, it could be a way of starting. As you kind of think of a business that's about as simple as it gets. You have something that you source and you sell it through a store. This is a way to get going. The competition's really high. The fees have gotten much more expensive. Everything across the entire supply chain has increased. The raw product cost of shipping, the cost of now fulfillment through Amazon, the cost of advertising through Amazon. So really the dynamics have shifted in a meaningful way. I would think that, you'd have to be a little bit smarter. It can't just be a product. You need to combine it with some type of, technology element or unique advantage that would make your product unique, differentiated, and maybe combined with something else. I think it's a great place to study. I think you should go look, but I would say that it certainly isn't what it once was. And so there's plenty of opportunity there, but it's getting more competitive.
Well, cool. Anything else? It's not Taylor?
No, I think this is great. Appreciate the time, Retta.
Good.
Yeah, very good. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Woo! Thank you for rocking with the homies. Taylor, Trusty, and Flavio. Seize the day, own it. Until next time, hold it down, hold it down. Hey.